Anthony.
Anthony, yeah. Brad. Oh, you got.
It is 4:30.
It's past 4:30.
Right, then I'm gonna start it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, hold on just a moment. Yeah. We don't have these things. Okay, now we're ready.
Okay, 4:43, I'm going to call this meeting to order and read the mission statement. A mission, the New America School New Mexico works as an educational community to empower and acknowledge the uniqueness of every learner by creating an individualized pathway to educational and social success. Next, moving on to the action items, can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Mr. President,
Yes.
there is an adjustment to the agenda.
Okay,
In the closed session, limited personnel matters, we no longer have a discussion action on removal of a governing council member. We have received a resignation.
okay, so we'll just remove that. No closed session today.
No closed session, and that is the only change I need to see on the agenda.
Okay,
I had a suggestion, since our resignee was treasurer, do we want to act on that tonight? Temporary interim.
I don't know if we need to, I mean,
I think it would rather than acting on tonight at the January meeting, kind of go over the tasks of the treasurer, because we didn't get to that part in our bylaws. So everybody is more informed.
yeah,
And
I don't
see.
know if, cause I go to the meetings, but I'm president, but I'm always there, so I don't.
I'm always there.
I'm wondering in terms of compliance.
Yeah.
I think we're okay. We just got the
Okay.
resignation.
Right,
We have a window.
Okay.
okay, so, again, back to number 3, can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
We'll move.
Moved by Margie,
I second the motion.
second by Lorraine. All in favor, say aye. Aye. It is approved. Next, motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting, November 13th, 2024.
Be approved as presented.
Moved by Margie,
I second the motion.
second by Lorraine. All in favor, say aye. Aye. It is approved. Next, we will move on to the finances and,
All right, just real quick, Mr. President and governing council members, we did meet in a finance meeting, earlier this week with, Seth and Anna Marie, and Ashley and Craig Cook and Ileana, when I say we, and we went line by line. So, Seth should have pretty detailed information and changes. So we're gonna go line by line again. I appreciate everyone's patience.
Okay.
Thank you. Beginning with the revenue, SEG's looking good. About halfway into the year, we've received the amount that reflects such. Moving on to the remaining funds, the 24,000s. We have Title I Idea B. We submitted RFRs, and those are beginning to come in. As we can see, we also submitted for Title I CSI, CTE, still awaiting those as of November 30th. Those have not been received by the school or paid by DFA. And then we also have our capital funds. So we received the HB 33 and SB 9, receive a large chunk this time of year due to mortgages and in the early summer as well for the same reason. Are there any questions on the revenue?
I've been trying to get in for 15 minutes.
And just a reminder, that those capital funds are generated by, property bonds.
Yep,
That's why when Seth says now, because of mortgages, tax bills are due, the money comes in.
exactly.
Moving on to the
I got an 88.
I'm fine.
It's my seat.
Yeah.
This is your,
Frederick.
They told me there weren't any available Fred when I.
I know, I believe you. They kind of talked to the girl and
Yeah,
gave
you
me a
would.
patio.
Okay,
Nice.
I'll talk to you later.
Huh?
Accommodations.
Combinations. Okay,
Okay,
sorry, go ahead.
But moving on to the expenditures. As Patricia mentioned, we met in the finance meeting and we thoroughly went through each and every line in this particular fund especially. We're looking at salaries. We want to make sure all the teachers that need to come out of special grant are coded as such and not SEG. We also have the computers and software. We had some duplicate lines prior month that we consolidated. Everything should have a budget and an actual reflecting such.
So Fred, can you get it?
Thank you.
page 3.
Are there any questions so far on the expenditures? The early functions?
Listen. Budget is where is that software stuff?
Yes. So the general supplies and materials
It's in 2,400.
and the software. Some of that software, met with Cook earlier today as well. Some of that software needs to be coming out of the state and federal revenues. So we need to move some of those. Some are going to stay in SEG, but we only budgeted 17,000. So the rest needs to come out of a special revenue, and we'll move it out in the next month's reports will reflect such.
Yeah, we used SB9 last year for our website and for APTA, I believe,
Aptitude, I believe.
and we certainly used it for Power School.
Okay. So that'll be moved out, and that'll take care of that negative line, the 32,000. Moving on, the expenditures. I'd like to point out in function,
Sorry,
Go
I
ahead.
wasn't there yet. We had talked about parent liaison stipend not being a thing.
Our parent liaison doesn't receive a stipend. So we were talking about
We weren't
stipends before the meeting. We're not sure what that is because that's not a stipend we've awarded. So we're not sure how it got on here, but that'll have to be cleaned up as we do the stipend
okay,
cleanup. Yeah,
and that's in function at 2,100,
it is.
right in the middle. We'll clean that up. Moving on to the other functions. I'd like to point out in function 2,600, we received the school's lease reimbursement. So we got a nice amount to come in and help clear that negative. Once we establish budget authority, we'll be able to relieve function 2,600. I'd like to remind the board that that negative 308,000, as well as line availability 167,000 for rent, land, and buildings, that lease reimbursement is going to come and alleviate that quite a bit.
Also, I'd like to remind the board, and Seth as well, we budgeted for custodial, but we don't have a custodian. That money, that needs to be closed. And we had talked about borrowing that over to other contract services to cover the custodial company. So that needs to occur. And likewise for security. Our security, we didn't budget for security. We budgeted for truancy intervention out of 2,100. So we need to make sure that that is in the correct place. Because that is where we have the funds for it. We didn't budget for that. And of course, the custodial, we had a custodian when we created the budget. Now we don't. So that's going to ease up that line as well when that 41,000 goes into other contract services. Likewise, looking at the other contract services for custodial right now, SEG is trying to hold two separate purchase orders. One for Service Master, which was, I believe, I would say $114,000, $119,000 for a year. We have released Service Master and picked up Clearly Clean, which is $59,000 for the year. So once we have paid out and I signed the checks today, We have completely paid out Service Master. That purchase order will close
Mhm.
and you will see that line come back into the black.
Yes, I was just gonna touch on that. Any,
Sorry, I jumped ahead.
no, that's perfect. Any questions before we move on from operationals?
Yeah, it's fine.
I have a quick question on some of these.
Uh-huh.
We seem to be just a little bit over in a bunch of supplies and materials.
Mhm.
I just want to make sure that our supplies and materials are actually coming from the right spots
Yes,
because we have other places where we have lots of money and supplies and materials. I just want to make sure they're being coded correctly. So I can work with Anna and you on that. But if we're buying paper for the front office, I want to make sure it's going to the right spot.
yes, for the correct function.
Yes,
And I believe some of those will also be moved into the special revenues. We have some budget.
they will.
It's a good segue. Moving on to the special revenues, USDA beginning to receive, expenditures are hitting. I'd like to also make note for USDA Universal Meals, you'll see that Universal Meals has some encumbrance.
Mhm,
That should alleviate.
mhm.
Sure. So that state portion, the intent of that is to help school, everybody eats free, bridging that gap. Whereas before the school had to come in and pay out of operational, so for everyone to eat free.
Even then, it's gonna be a pretty big gap. Our student, and I'm sure Ms. Gagus could speak more cogently to this than I am, but, although our student meals are down a lot over years, I just signed a check for $14,000 for 1 month of canteen. The expenses of feeding of our students are shooting through the roof. Because of new regulations, canteen has to meet, they're rolling the cost over to the schools. It is becoming prohibitively expensive. Fortunately, we do get the universal meals and we'll do a calculation at well, actually, we'll have to do it in February because this year is the year that Ms. Gallegos is going to take food services out to RFP. Canteen's contract is up this year, so we need to look and see who else is out there and what can we do to ensure that our kids get good food.
I'm sure we have a lot of excess food every day.
So much.
And what do we do with it?
It gets tossed, or if it's something like fruit or it's in a wrapper, it goes to a take me table. And then students can take that if they want to, but if the kitchen makes 60 extra nuggets, well, honestly, I think they should give them to the kids. But sometimes there's things that the kids don't like because they're
How
just
about
kind
for
of
your
weird.
chickens?
Well, and I've talked about that. I've looked at that also simply because it's better than it just going into the trash.
Yeah.
Compost is better than trash. So we'll be looking at that. But in the meantime, it's my estimation, we have got to find a way to balance those meals somehow.
And we're working really hard in the cafeteria and trying to make sure that that we're not making, overabundance of things. Problem is, if corn dogs come in a case of 50 and we need 70, then we open 2 cases, but then only 40 eat. And then it's like,
I think I mentioned this one of the meetings.
You can
Those have to have
here, let me give you the list
a
of
commissary to make some.
financials.
I wonder if we can lease it out
I don't need them.
to one of them.
I've got
Are
them
we gonna
after.
sort that out or not?
we had mentioned it about reaching out like to APS and asking
did.
them to use our kitchen, or I don't know that
The
we can
county
do.
commission.
We have, and
Small
we've
federal
looked at that
access.
before. And even when we've talked with APS or other food service vendors, I just remind the governing council that Soup Box had very deep concerns about utilizing our kitchen to serve other schools for liability reasons.
Not necessarily
same
other
thing.
schools, but the taco trucks
Right.
The same thing
have
with
to have a
business.
commissary, a permanent
Mhm.
for county commission. We approved it. And if they have more than 3 or 4 trucks at a place, they have to have a toilet, wash basin,
Sure.
but they have to have a permanent place to prepare their food. And I don't know why we wouldn't be able to contract. I heard some good ones. I've been in a couple, but
I don't see why we couldn't either. I mean, it's something we'd have to look into. But I do think we need to find ways to utilize our facility more
Oh,
effectively.
yeah, I'd love to be able to do that.
Love to be able to do that. And honestly, our students prefer just a bologna sandwich over almost anything else we can make. And
It's
we,
Friday.
Fried
No.
bologna, yeah.
no, not fried
No.
bologna, but
They like the ham and cheese.
no, I grew up on it.
They
Okay,
will
ham
eat
and cheese.
the sack lunches regularly. They will eat
They
the sack
like the
lunches.
sack luncheon
The
more than the
sandwich or what?
food.
Sandwich.
Just a sandwich,
And then like
Um,
chips on the
Is
fruit.
it a sandwich or sandwich?
sandwich.
Depends on who you ask.
But it could be a sandwich.
What part of the style value?
Anyway, we need to find a way to look at the kitchen and use it more effectively to possibly bring in some revenue as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the potential's there. So when we find something, and there was something that we had been talking in the last
And
month,
also
and I
teach the
cannot think of
kids
what it
about,
was. Using
you know,
the kitchen.
business.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we talked about students. Revenue wise,
It was something revenue based. We're using our kitchen for other, I don't remember what it was though.
I mean, you know, they can
Anyway.
make tamales in Christmas time and sell them.
them.
We absolutely
and-
can. And we had a conversation about how, I know we're teeny tiny, but Bernalillo Public High School has this fantastic culinary arts program, and the students cook and they learn how to do culinary arts. And then once a month, they put on an elaborate meal. And as an administrator, I couldn't get tickets to it. You had to get them 6 months in advance and then sell tickets. Yes, to this
But as
meal
governing council, we'll have like first dibs.
to buy the tickets.
We had talked about trying to partner with other schools.
We talked
for-
about partnering
for
with, yes,
culinary arts as a class.
Is it a full commercial kitchen?
it is. It is.
Got the new water heater.
Not yet.
In the works.
We got the quote on it. Now we're bird walking, but we got the quote on it. It's going to cost about $4,000. I signed off on it.
For hot water heater?
It's split all the way down the side.
And how many gallons?
50 gallons,
And how much?
4,000 to take it, replace it, clean it all up, put it in the new one, bring it to code. There was an issue that they said it wasn't to code, and that's the problem. And then haul
I'll
away
be
the
happy.
broken one.
I just put a 60-gallon one in my house.
You know what? I'll tell you what. In January, we'll have a whole report on the kitchen.
Okay. Well, I'd be happy to. I know somebody was, and they live down the street. from
Well,
there. Big company.
Send them to me because that's the quote we have from Albuquerque Heating. Because they're the ones I could get to come out quickly.
Yeah,
Not to say I have to use them. They're the ones we had an open
so it
PO
doesn't need
for.
to be done right away, obviously. There's two of them, right? There's one.
There's two.
Yeah.
One runs the bathrooms and the showers. That's
Yeah.
the original one
Yeah,
from
yeah.
two thousand and
The
thirteen.
other one's just for the kitchen.
The other one's from the 2016 kitchen edition. The kitchen one's fine. If the kitchen one had broken, we couldn't serve out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
The bathrooms, they can still wash their hands, albeit in cold water, but we're almost to winter break. So if we can get it fixed over winter break, it'll be fixed. But the sooner, Fred, you can have that person come talk to me, the sooner I can get that
Well,
quote.
you call him right now.
And that, well, after the
And
meeting.
he's a friend of Art de la Cruz.
And that quote, is well within my authority and we don't need to take it to bid or anything. So yeah, just have them talk to me.
Yeah, so I have two water heaters. One's 60 and one's 40. Which is wrong. I built my house, it doesn't work. So the one that's 40 operates two bathrooms in the laundry.
Right.
The other one does one bathroom in the kitchen. But in order to get to it, they have to take the door jamb out. Because it was too
Too big.
wide to go with
Right.
the door jamb, so. And they do all the Dutch Brothers, all the
Well,
Mavericks.
something we saw was when the gym was built in 2013, facilities were put in for a washer and dryer. So we could have a washer and dryer. But when the kitchen was built in 2016, they put the hot water heater for the kitchen where the washer goes. So I'm also asking for a quote to move that so we can have a washer and dryer for our kids. For some of them, it's kind of a pressing issue. We'd like to be able to offer that service. But right now, all of the hookups are there. There's a large water heater sitting there.
They're just.
So we're
Move this
probably
thing.
gonna look at moving some things. And I feel like I should say, because I need to say this, that fiscally, this is all the responsibility of our landlord, the person who holds the leases. and that is CSDC. However, I'm not gonna
I'm
poke
just gonna
that bear.
text.
So we'll come back to that. And also in January, we'll give you the status. We did receive the grant of the kitchen grant, so we can receive a new ice maker and new equipment for a new salad bar. And we needed to fix a couple of other things. So yeah, in January, Ileana's principals report can be all around the kitchen restructuring and what we're looking at. Excellent.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
I didn't mean.
Universal free meals.
No, it's a good conversation.
Nice.
And I hadn't told you guys that the hot water heater split all the way down the side. Ileana has videos of the waterfall.
Just coming out. It was pretty interesting.
Not bad.
At least
Yeah.
it
That
didn't
bad.
explode. Sometimes they
Yeah.
like take.
Like the whole thing was completely open, like it peeled open,
Dangerous.
50 gallons.
Coming out.
Yeah.
Coming out pretty
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
Page 5?
Moving on
Yeah.
to the,
Yeah, we're on top.
Page 5. So we did have a question here, Seth, in this Title I
Sure.
with employee benefits. We weren't sure how we ended up in the red with employee benefits when that's typically something that's calculated
calculated, yeah, so,
like by the computer.
Yeah, they're like huge.
So how could we end up that far over?
so first of all, insurance rates have gone up.
Go away.
All the time.
I was gonna say, I didn't get a raise.
So the schools are feeling it this year. You guys got a little relief, for the schools, yearly risk premium. They gave a nice little discount,
Yeah.
but the rest, has gone up. So yes, the benefits,
But we
only in
calculated
this
that.
So did you get new teachers or something or?
No,
And it's only, I think, in this one, I don't, or maybe we saw it in one
Page are
other
you
one.
on?
We're on
There's
page
two.
5. There were two.
there's one also under the
So here
grants.
we only have
Title
one
I.
salary
Mhm.
and the benefits have already been encumbered nearly double what. Well, yeah, we just weren't sure how that ended up so far in the red.
Yeah. So here we
I
are.
could take a further look, but just looking at this report and, based on the last meeting, the finance meeting, this salary is taking up, those benefits there, the parent liaison. And, that encumbrance does look a little high, but, it makes sense. They probably have, depending on their setup, a full family, based on their premium.
I can tell you they don't.
They don't?
They do
Okay,
not.
then I'll take a further look.
Yeah.
That's something worth noting.
There are 2 people paid out of that line out of CSI. And I do not, one has insurance for herself solely,
Okay.
and the other one does not have insurance for the school.
And I'll also talk with Stephanie. There might be something, a small coding with someone else's benefits where their
That's what we
salaries.
were
tied to their own.
thinking.
So I'll touch base with Stephanie. She just got back, so.
Yeah, that really stood out to us. We're like,
Yeah.
there's
There's a
no,
lot.
there's no way. So if you could check that, the coding, that was one thing that really leapt out to us yesterday when we were reviewing it.
Okay,
Just another little supplies and materials again.
And then supplies and material.
yes, we'll double check that. Submitting RFRs, like I said, we'll be submitting another one here on the 15th. We submit every 15th, as Mike mentioned, last meeting. First week's end of month, we want to get everything reconciled. Generally, that gives us enough time for bills to be paid. And then we have actuals to submit to
Mhm.
PED in order to, receive those RFRs.
And I will say that Seth had submitted an RFR to Title I, but there was a question about personnel. So I asked them to refuse it until we have time to reconcile the issue. We have, I believe, reconciled the issue, so that one should be going through.
Yes. And
It
it's
was
be
a
resubmitted.
personnel miscommunication.
Title I CSI, submitting RFR for there as well. You can see we're hitting the lines nicely. We've got a coordinator out of there, associated benefits. The graduation outcome specialist, however, we have,
That benefits is another line where we're like, that's the
Right.
other benefit one.
that's another one too.
Well, look at it, it's huge
14
for one person.
14,000.
Mm-hmm.
I'll double check, but doesn't raise any flags to me.
Well, let's look at it, because that graduation outcome specialist hasn't been hit,
We
but
talked
she's
about
on.
that.
Okay,
No,
sorry.
no, you and I talked
Oh,
about that.
yes. We have someone who's been there since July working on that. So we need to make sure that she is out of there. So just to make sure that, I'll give you the name afterwards.
Sure.
And it was the same up here with the
Um,
interventionist.
Yes, and the interventionist also, we gave you her name, when we met last week,
But nothing.
Yes,
so we
so,
just need to make sure. And I know you're cleaning up personnel.
right. So another note I'll make, we did some JEs referencing that particular employee. They're not gonna reflect here. These are dated, as of 11/30, end of November. These were posted at 12/6, if I remember correctly, so in December's report, they'll reflect moving on. But they won't be captured in this report, just due to the dates of the payroll and the payroll hitting with that employee and that JE change needing to be made with that payroll. So everything up to that payroll and behind won't be captured as of November 30th.
Okay. Yes, but certainly in January, our personnel should be
Yes,
clean.
absolutely.
Okay.
Any questions out of expenditures so far? Of course, we have our capital funds, special capital outlay. There's a deadline coming up for that in December.
Mhm.
Working with Latricia on that.
I've submitted everything I need to submit quite a while ago.
Okay,
And I've got the thank you, we're working on it, so.
so that's in the works. That's gonna
It
be
is.
completed. A nice little chunk of change for the school.
It is set aside for a new security system.
Security system.
Mhm. Which we're having installed over winter break, so it'll be good to pay for it.
Just in time.
You're gonna contact the United Healthcare investor.
Telling ya. Charities.
Any more
Yeah.
questions out of expenditures? Moving on to the bank account register. If there are any questions, please let me know. If there are no questions, we'll move on to the POs report, the purchase orders. If there are any questions here, please let me know.
We had a question over one of these at the meeting that it was a strange, oh, I know what it was. It was on purchasing totals by vendor.
Mhm.
It was the wrong, it is still the wrong janitorial name. Page 11. It should not be Marathon Janitorial. You were gonna look into that.
Mhm.
We don't have any contacts. We don't even know who that is. So just, you thought you had maybe gotten confused with another school, so remember to check into that and see
It's
who
only
it is that that's
$90,000.
open to. It's only $90,000, yes, so we probably should have the correct name there.
Yes, and that's correct. NAS does not do business with Marathon Janitorial.
Now, it is clearly clean, is that one.
But the dollar amount is correct for
Yes.
custodial services, just not Marathon Janitorial.
That is, yes,
And I also introduced a column based on the last meeting. The purpose of this report
yes,
is to show that we're not overpaying. We have a purchase order established for the year. So you'll see the actual column. That'll tell us how much we've paid against the PO for the entire year with respect to the listed vendor.
yes, thank you for adding that in.
Mhm.
I remind the GC that 2 years ago, we got an audit finding for going over, particularly Matthews Fox. We went to 62,000. Our contract was 60. When you get close, you've got to take it out to bid, or you've got to do an addendum. There are things you can do. We didn't do it because we didn't realize we were too close, and then we went over. This enables Ileana and I, as we're looking at it, to know when we're getting close enough that we need to either go out to bid or jump onto someone else's contract to do a piggyback. It's good information for us to have. Seth had originally put just the PO amounts, which is good to know, but it wasn't letting us know how much we'd already expended. With the new column he put on, now we can easily see that if we're close or not. So thank you, Seth, for putting that in. It's very
Absolutely.
helpful.
How is that possible that It's a different thing. It's just golden.
So when we run these reports on APTA, we make them presentable for the board and for the public. With all the data and the accounting codes, it's really difficult to read. So we go in line by line and do basically manual editing for the things like vendor name, removing the account codes and just explaining the account codes rather than just have a bunch of numbers. So sometimes clerical human error, sometimes transpositional.
So, and we caught it last week when we went over it, but I assume you didn't have time to change it or
It slipped through the
it
cracks.
slipped through the
Yeah.
cracks.
That's what
Okay.
happened.
All right.
And it looks like for Moss Adams, we did in fact technically overpay, not by a large amount,
We
but
did.
but we did just right on the head. So I like to just point that out.
Yeah. As long as we don't go over is bad. But it's looking pretty good. Okay.
Moving on to the outstanding checks. Worked on reissuing.
I deposited as soon as I got it today.
I signed checks today. They have been reissued.
The remaining, of course, they could just be sitting in the mailbox, could be a delay, vendor's not cashed them in yet. That's what this report tells us.
That's a big check for Imagine Learning
Right. To just be sitting there.
to just be sitting there.
What do they do?
They're the software that does our intervention program, our MyPath, the student learning advisory to work on reading and math intervention.
Mhm. It's through like the
Okay.
ingenuity that we originally had and they changed the title. It's also our students use it for credit recovery sometimes. But
then the
I'm
CTE.
wondering what happened there, because in the past, we haven't paid Imagine Learning directly. We have paid someone else, and it was a flow through to Imagine Learning, and I'm wondering if we have paid them through, I believe it was CES.
Okay.
And if we paid CES, that's why that check's never cleared, because Imagine Learning doesn't get checks from us directly.
I'll reach out with Anna, contact them and get some clarification on that. Now that, now hearing that, that's probably what's happening.
In which case that check can just be canceled because they're not going to clear it.
And OneStream's our internet.
OneStream is our internet. No, I'm sorry, it's our phones. Our internet is through Granite.
Moving on to the bank account reconciliation. We can see what we have. The 1130 reconciled minus the outstanding checks, and of course, the unrestricted and the restricted amounts of this total. As you can see, the majority of it, the 2.3 million, is restricted. It's USDA, special grants, federal and state, that all have specific spending parameters based on what the schools agreed upon based on their budget application.
And Seth, if you could bring the GC current on what we're looking at as far as the 8120 day count, and when we can expect the audit to be released,
Mhm.
as well as release the carryover, and then of course the state pulling the money back.
So the audit, we can discuss the audit as soon as it's published through the Office of the State Auditors. We can discuss it until then, but ideally I'm thinking mid to late winter. Historically, this take time to be published, and we can then discuss publicly. And also the 8120 day, that's going to be coming up. So we had the 40 day in October, excuse me. So we're going to have to prepare for an SEG cut. We've discussed, Latricia and I, Colonel and I, we've discussed what that amount's going to look like. FY24, the projected carryover was $500,000. It looks like we're going to be bringing in about 800,000.
It is. We projected a carryover 550,000 conservatively. Our rough estimate coming back in is around $350,000 over what we budgeted for. That will fill the deficit caused by the drop in students. So we're really not going to take a hit to SEG. It just means we can't use it down the road. It doesn't exist, but it's not really going to hurt the school per se. And 120 day is the second week in February. So of course, 8120 day is what the state uses to determine our final student count for this year. Once that's determined is when they will decide how our finances work.
And they'll execute the SEG change at that point in time. That could be the school owes money, or it could just mean our SEG drops drastically, but we still get a deposit that could range 15, 30, 40,000. Or sometimes, you know, schools have to pay that amount back, but we'll know then once that's executed.
So we'll take a hit, but it's nothing the school can't sustain this year because of the very large carryover that we've carefully buried for years. Always have had good carryover for a rainy day. It's raining. It's just, yeah, as you know, we've got to watch that student count and or really take a hard look at our budget next year.
And budget season's coming up, so
It is.
we'll be right on it.
Every day is budget season.
Lastly, on the finance reports, the balance sheet, tie in those the restricted and unrestricted amount at the bottom of the bank recon, as well as get an idea what RFRs we're waiting for that are being taken out of SEG in the time being.
Okay.
Are there any questions on November's financials?
You all discussed this earlier.
Last week, we meet the week prior to the governing council and we go line by line very carefully and we make a lot of corrections so that hopefully by the time it Seth sends it to me so I can send it out to you, a lot of the corrections should be made already. It is an excellent training exercise for Eliana as well as Anna. And Seth.
Yes, I was gonna say, it's definitely a learning experience and I love them. They're great. There are no questions on the financials. We have a bar that the board will vote on this evening. We only have one bar for this meeting. And that's going to be bar number 6. And that's going to be an initial budget. And this is the lease reimbursement that I mentioned earlier. Got an awarded amount of the school, got an awarded amount of $141,507. And this will submit reimbursement requests quarterly. So now that we've paid rent for December, we can submit Q1 and Q2. So we'll receive half of that if they're on the faster end by the end of January, the slower end probably the end of February, considering submission at this point in time in December. Are there any questions for this bar?
If there aren't any questions, can I get a motion to approve the finances and the bar as presented?
So
Moved by Fred. Second by Margie. Any further discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved unanimously. Thank you. That does it for our action items. Next, we're going to move on to the executive director report.
All right, I'm gonna go over the CSDC and have a nice conversation. Before I get to that, I wanted to remind the governing council that next Thursday and Seth, the next Thursday, the 19th at 6 o'clock is our holiday dinner. It is at Taj Mahal and that has been for the last 12 years. If you would like to join us, we're downstairs in Taj Mahal and you guys have gone before for some nice Indian food. There is also a white elephant ornament exchange. If you want to bring an ornament, see which ornament you end with at the end of the night. It's always kind of fun. I will tell you that the ornaments, it's competitive. They are nice ornaments. We generally don't have cranky ornaments.
Yes.
I got mine off Etsy, all three of them. Anyway,
Oh,
Um,
seriously.
it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
serious thing. One of the teachers and I, we started trash talking in October
Oh,
for
yes.
our ornaments. We have a competition. Who that's the prettiest ornament. So, feel free to join us if you want to join the ornament change. Just bring a wrapped ornament. If you don't want to, but join us for dinner, join us for dinner. It's very nice. We'll be decorating about 5:30. Starting at about
What date was
6
that again?
Thursday, the 19th.
Thursday the 19th, see if we can be live.
I will send you guys a text to remind you as well. But it's always nice. And so now
19th.
on to CSDC.
Yep.
All right, we've been trying to get this modular thing done for a few years now. As you recall, last year we got hung up because the project manager quit around November, and then we ran out of time. We couldn't get it pulled off. Laura said, never mind. And then this summer I had to redo the entire lease all over again. I did that. I did all the paperwork, and believe me, it was a lot. I submitted it. It was all the paperwork you would need, as if they didn't even know who we were.
Right.
GC resumes, names, all the stuff. And then it was we wait. Craig reached out to Laura, and she said, well, with the holidays now, it's hard to get someone out there. And the project manager just stopped by my office. He was in the area. He's the project manager for the entire Western United States for Charter Schools Development Corporation. We just got lucky that he happened to be in Albuquerque. I met with him. I went over our plans. And at that meeting, he was concerned that we would not have enough time to pull permits to get things done. And I said, well, we do have 2 phases here. Phase 1, phase 2. And we can even do it while school's in session, because we have the facilities to make that work. I still didn't get a very enthusiastic vibe. He did not want to walk around and look at the mods. He did not want to look at the property. He just said, okay. He took my paperwork and said he'd talk to Laura. I haven't heard back from Laura yet, and we are really heading into the holidays. So here we are again. It's December. We're about to go into the January. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to be honest. So it's not going to happen. Ileana and I have talked, and the thing we would like the board to consider is, so let's not do it. If they say it'll be next summer, that's tough, because next summer is the summer prior to renewal. And I don't believe they're going to come in and put down a couple $1 million when we are 2 months away from our renewal hearing, which I think will go fine. But it's money. But
Yeah.
and I don't see them do it. I wouldn't do it if I were them. How's that? So if the mods stay, the mods stay. The mods in back were built for the school and were put into place in 2011 or 12.
So they're newer.
They're newer. They're in fairly good shape. The 5 in front were used when they came to the school. So now they're kicking around 25, 27 years old. They're not in great shape. However, we think what would be a better path forward is, at this point, and let me come over here for a minute. Because
It's a beautiful picture.
it is a beautiful picture, isn't it?
By Las Cruces, right?
Let me go back to Zoom and share this
That's
so
good
we're all
pictures.
looking at it. This is the CSDC amortization schedule. This is where we're at right now. Our payoff date is here,
27.
27. We're 2 years out. And our final payment will be on that date. It's a little bitty payment. You can see that. This is where we're sitting. So after this month's payment goes through, we will have the balance of $892,000 and change owing to CSDC. Now that money was originally for go way back here, when it was big, that was for the improvements to the property, the improvements to the land. So they took all that on after 1734 LLC was the original financier. CSDC paid off 1734. We started paying it down. And then somewhere around
Show to carry the slow.
right? Anyway, they didn't go back that far. But somewhere in the vicinity of 2013, 2014, we built the NG. The whole thing, not the kitchen, but we put it in place. It was a $3 million facility. So at this point, and since then we added the kitchen, which was roughly $280,000 on top of it. If you look at where we're sitting now, I believe what we should possibly pursue is going to CSDC and saying we don't want new mods, but what we do want to do is we want to restructure our lease with you to get rid of everything except the NG. Because really that's a $33.3 million facility. That's less than 3.3 million. If we restructure the lease to get rid of everything except that facility, it can roll into a lease purchase agreement. Once it rolls into a lease purchase agreement, we can then use the SB9, HB33 monies to make those payments, and almost immediately, $247,000 a year goes back into our seg.
What are we waiting for?
Well, we just
Well,
hammered this, we just
conversation.
cobbled this
We
together.
didn't know about
Is the,
the other part not coming to fruition, not having, just getting delayed. It was like,
yes,
Laura, let us know. It's like Craig is like
Yeah,
bothering her all the time.
we,
Just run up the clock.
Yeah,
they're just running out the clock. And we could wait until November 1st, 2027, and CSDC's paid off.
Yeah. No, but
And the same
we-
thing happens, except,
we've always wanted to use that money, and that's what we still want to do.
yes,
Use that money to free up the other money so they can go back in there, just like
but
Patricia
more
said.
pressingly, if we could do it now, even better. The other thing to consider is if we buy the mods, we're gonna spend a lot of our $4.8 million infrastructure that we have. In 8 years, our lease with St. Anne's Sundowns. Now, it was originally a 40-year lease, and after 20 years, we had the option of getting out if we wanted to or staying. It's our choice.
Mhm.
That brings us to the 20 years. In 8 years, it's possible to tell St. Anne's, keep your property, we're taking our toys and going somewhere else. Or asking them again to sell us the
maybe
property.
it should be.
Maybe so, but they might. If we go to them and we say now or nothing, they
Right.
might jump. They might not. But the fact is, if we don't get new mods, we'll still have over 3 million in which to purchase property. If we buy mods now, we won't. Now that money will continue to accrue over time as long as the bond continues to pass and the Albuquerque voters continue to say, yes, the money will accrue. The real danger here is if the state gets froggy and they sweep our funds, which they've done before.
Yeah,
So
change the governors pretty soon.
we will. And if they come through and if we'll have about $5 million,
But
I
the
remind
state
you,
has so much money
yes,
everywhere. Why do they need
Oh,
to take?
they took away all the over 21s
I know.
for $5 million.
That was-
$5 million would have kept the over 21s in our schools.
That's all it was?
That's all it was
For everyone. Yeah.
for every adult in the state
The whole state.
currently enrolled at a high school. They sold them out for $5 million. We'll be holding that in our thing. See, we could fund every adult in the state.
But we're gonna be using some of it though in this.
We are.
I know it
We're
looks
not-
like we're actively using
yeah.
it.
We will have a targeted thing. We are buying cameras. We are buying the thing. Every year we're going to hit it. We're just not going to hit it for $2.7 million.
We could also put money down for the,
We could, in theory, get the LPA with Laura, pay half of it off outside
yeah.
out of the
just-
pocket.
just to start with, yeah.
But remember, we do want to keep a lease payment
Yes,
because we get lease assistance
Right.
funds.
We do.
Yeah.
Mhm. And those are gonna increase as well.
They're going to increase, but what we need to do is have that balance. What do we get for lease assistance and make sure that our payment does not exceed that amount?
right.
Because then SEGs never hit.
He's taking care of.
That's just a monetary calculation. But I think this is the better way to go forward for the school.
Yeah.
If we buy mods, it would be great to have nice new mods. It really
And
would. Everybody
If we
wants
move
them.
in 8 years, we have to move those mods as well.
And in 20 years, we'll have mods that are no good that we have to get rid of and will have to be replaced. In 8 years, if we move, it'll be to a property where we can build a facility or we take over an actual building and we can revamp it. I'm not going to be here in 8 years, but Ileana, in conversations with Ileana, is very comfortable with keeping the mods as they are and pursuing with this plan. Unless you have anything else to say.
And they're
because I'm just-
usable. It's just not
They're
like they're fun.
usable, and I think with some good maintenance and some good conversations with Will Scott about what they're willing to improve and fix and what we can fix.
Except we said pursue.
New maintenance guy.
It's doable.
New maintenance guy, and Will Scott will go so far and no further.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're gonna have to paint them, but remember, we're not really supposed to be spending our money for that because we don't own those buildings. And the upkeep is technically Laura's responsibility, but that's not gonna fly either. So we were talking about, yes, painting them. We paid someone this summer to come in and really do a great job on the floors and they looked amazing. Are the tiles pulling apart a little bit? Yeah, they are. Do they not match anymore? They don't in every mod, but they still look nice and the mods will work. They need some love. And I will talk to Will Scott and Crystal about that. But this is my recommendation to the GC is that we now talk to Susan Fox and then Laura about rather than borrowing more money from them, which we still would have had them paid off quickly, but we would have used our reserves. We hold our reserves. We ask them to restructure to where we only have an LPA for the gym. We make sure it matches our lease assistance. And then we're good to go. And in 8 years, the school will have the funds to move to a permanent facility.
I'd like to add on the lease assistance. Currently, it's calculated about 850 per student.
Yeah.
That's outdated, obviously. That's what they think facility should cost per student. So that hopefully will change in the near future. That's been recognized and there's been pushes year after year to increase that. So there's hope in that.
Is that not kept up with inflation?
Not at all.
Not at all.
And it
What's
was back
inflation?
and forth for years. Like 1 year they would say, we're gonna give it to you based on how many kids you have. And then it was, we're gonna give it to you based on your square footage.
Yeah.
No, how many kids you have? No, square footage.
It was square.
And literally year over year, we didn't know. And then about 5 years ago, they said, okay, we're just square footage. Doesn't matter about the number of kids. Oh, no, it's straight number of kids. We don't care how big your building is. We're only gonna fund off your kids.
Wow.
Only our student numbers have dropped.
Everyone.
Whatever.
Everyone's has. APS is down 15,000.
What is it? What's our?
Our number is in about 130 right now. So it's low.
Go back. 21.
I know.
I talk to people all the time.
So something to think about. If you're okay with it, I will talk to Sue Fox about it. That is the next step. Is talking to Susan Fox and seeing what she thinks and then going to CSDC.
Yeah.
This isn't an action item. It's mostly just me telling you, I think this is the best path
Right.
forward for the school.
Because it's been forced upon us, really. I mean, we
Yeah.
wanted to get things done and it just didn't work out that way. And so now we have to move in a
Years
different
later.
direction. Yeah,
Years
So-
over year.
That's just the way it is. And so it makes sense to me. But
Done all these things, I think rather than continuing to do that, and even then, I'm not confident, regardless of what's been said, that CSDC will come lay down $2.7 million for us.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a struggle just
It's
to get
tricky.
to this point with
It
that.
is. So I think this is a quicker, cleaner solution. It brings money
Have we discussed it with
rapidly
Greg?
back into it. Have we discussed it with him? I have extensively. And Craig has come to agree that this is probably the best way to go forward fiscally for the school. And certainly looking 8 years down the road, this is a good solution. We let go of the mods, but it gives the school money, and in 8 years, the school has freedom to do what the school needs to do. If you have anything you want to add, since
No, I mean, that's pretty much the conversation we had, and I think it just is a really good way to look to the future of the school and in the hopes that we could end up in a permanent facility and build a building. I think that that's just a better being stewards of the public's money rather than using it for mods that we're gonna have to rebuy again at some point in time.
or since they're materials, they're not even buildings.
Yeah.
It puts the school into the unenviable position of having to sell them
Yes.
at some point.
You could sell the
And-
William Scotts.
You could sell them to Scotsman, yes.
Okay, well,
Um,
for my mama.
so having to sell them, disposal of property,
Mhm.
such a huge pain in the head. So,
Call it keeping our options open.
There you
keeping
go.
our options open, it's a savvy restructuring, brings money back into the school right now, allows us to access our bond money right now. And if CSD says no, and in 2 years, we're out from under CSTC anyway, no matter, we could sit and do nothing. And in 2 years, it goes away. The other thing is though, it'd be really good to restructure this because right now the New American School, New Mexico has the highest lease payments in the state of any charter. And it is brought up at every single time I go to renewal
It's been that way.
or we talk to the state.
Yeah.
And it was built that way so that it would be a rapid payoff in less than 20 years. I know why they did it. But APS is unsympathetic. The PEC will be unsympathetic.
There's
It is
always
better.
some board member
There's-
that's got a problem with
There's somebody, and it would be better to go, if we do nothing in 2 years, it goes away. However, that does take the school into the next renewal, still making those payments. And you can say, we're done in November, but you gotta turn the stuff in October. Or you refinance now and it's moot. APS doesn't care about the grants. They only look at SEG. This will allow $247,000 a year to go directly back into student coffers, which is what they're gonna look at when the school goes to renewal. How much goes directly to students? What percentage goes directly to students? And this balances everything upside down to what it is right now.
I think we should act on it as soon as possible. We will, please do.
Yeah.
Because we're spinning our wheels.
We are,
So you're saying you're gonna consult with Susan also? Or at this stage?
Susan is the first one to consult with.
It's always,
Sol is the one, because she's the one who'll work with Laura to put the LPA together. But if the gym was originally $2.3 million and we currently owe a little over 800,000, there's no reason that LPA won't fly. We can still have it paid off in 2 years. The point is to have the LPA in place.
yeah, so we can use the money.
Yes. The LPA is the ticket to the SB9 HB 33 funds. I mean, other than us spending, 100,000 on cameras, 30,000 on security, and that's great. We buy desks, we buy computers, we buy things, but
Amazon's happy.
Amazon loves us. Power on, things were fantastic. We don't need a bus, but actually, and just so you know, Doc's getting a little long in the tooth.
How many miles?
Not like 68,000.
Not
Not
that
a
many,
lot.
but he is,
Yeah.
he's getting up there in years.
He's
More
68,000, but
years
he's,
than mileage.
yes, 68,000, but 14 years old.
Slow
Yeah.
mileage, yeah.
14 years old.
1,000 used to be.
So,
Lease is too now.
so anyway,
General.
those are my thoughts.
All right.
Would you like me to proceed with talking to Susan?
Yes.
Of course, yeah.
Okay,
Got the message.
and I will
read.
stop share this.
Yeah.
And that is pretty much the end of my principals report. I sent you all the schedule for the conference tomorrow. Some really great things.
And also in the folder, it'll have the whole.
It does.
Yep.
Everything is there.
So is this where we go tomorrow, all these?
Yes, because that's what you've got to go to those things for your training. It is 5:43 as soon as Paul, because he hasn't finished the meeting yet.
Paul,
but-
before you finish the meeting, can you be my tour guide tomorrow?
We'll let him finish the meeting first.
5:43.